Pod. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Say Who Say Pod. He's Danny O'Neil. No tie for Danny, but he is wearing the sports coat.
I kind of liked how it looked last week. I kind of liked how it looked. Maybe it's some vanity peeking through. Maybe there is a glimpse of my former self who used to somewhat dress up each day for work. But I kind of liked how it looked.
I think that's what fed the algorithm. I think they were like, who's this sharp looking guy? Let's feed this to Husky fans. Thanks to everybody listening anywhere, as always, but a special shout out to folks who are listening / watching on YouTube, who watched our YouTube debut last week. Quite the strong reception, I gotta say. I'm not a podcast watcher, but a lot of people are. It's an interesting phenomenon. I think with our show in particular, when you hear 150 some episodes of two people, and then you have a chance to see what do these guys actually look like? You know, what is the inside of Christian Caple's home office in Tacoma look like? And then you see it and you're like, oh, okay.
Last week I was squatting in front of a table in a hotel room at the Sheraton in downtown Seattle, but now I'm back in lovely New York City.
Yeah. Well, it's slightly better microphone. A little bit.
Yeah, I do have a much better microphone instead. Although I like the look of people holding the iPhone headphone little thing for the earbuds in front of them like a microphone. I think it's such a low rent, janky way of doing it that I like the aesthetic of it.
People love the organic vibe, man. They like that. We're going to talk about star freshmen at Washington training camp today. First, Danny, I want to put you in the position of general manager / head coach. You're heading up a recruiting department. And let's say that that recruiting department is at the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona. And let's say there's a high school player, a receiver, playing his high school ball 20 minutes from your stadium, thereabouts. You could say he's local.
Yeah.
He's not the ideal height for a receiver, and he does not have elite speed for his size. So he's not a guy that the big programs on the West Coast are probably going to be clamoring for. This is someone who you could probably get if you wanted. But he's the state's all-time record holder in career receptions. He is a 50-tackle multi-interception guy as a safety. He is a decathlete, and he plays basketball. And he's the Arizona State Gatorade Player of the Year in football. Would you recruit him?
Of course.
Would you reach out?
At that point, I would have to have a compelling reason. I will have a general rule of thumb. If the guy is the best and named the best high school player in your state, I would need a compelling reason not to have him come to my school. If I'm a public university, I would need a compelling reason that this just isn't going to work at the next level to not be offering him, absolutely reaching out to him, but really want him on the team.
Jedd Fisch agreed with you. And when he was the head coach at Arizona, his staff did indeed recruit Desmond Roebuck, star athlete from Marana High School. I don't know if it's just outside Tucson or actually in Tucson. I've seen the address is one thing, but it's basically in Tucson. Okay. Not surprising that he still wanted him when that staff came to Washington. Not surprising that Desmond Roebuck committed to Washington and to that staff that believed in him all along. Would you believe that Arizona's new coaching staff did not recruit him?
It surprises me. Was it so much of a done deal that he was going with Fisch that they didn't? But even then, you've got to be reaching out to him, right? That's, even if it's just a formality at that point.
Yeah, I would guess there was probably some thought that the groundwork's been laid. He loves that staff. If they want him, they're going to get him. Let's not waste our time. But imagine Jedd Fisch and his staff coming into UW and there being, and again, we're not talking about a blue chip recruit, so it's a little bit different. I mean, he's criminally underrated for what he was in high school. Imagine Jedd Fisch and his staff coming to UW and there's a kid at, I don't know, Kennedy Catholic or Federal Way, or who's like the state's all-time leader in receptions and a Gatorade State Player of the Year and one of the best athletes in the history of his school, and you could get him and you decide, we're just not going to bother because he's probably going somewhere else.
People who have listened to this podcast for any length of time understand that I was less than full-throated in my enthusiasm for Jedd Fisch. First, when he was at Arizona, and then later, even when kind of before the actual hiring at Washington. One of the most significant things that I heard in people telling me, hey, you need to reconsider that, or this is actually a good position. One came from someone on Twitter and another came from someone who I know who's a high school coach down in Arizona, saying Jedd Fisch did an incredible job of rebuilding relationships with local high school coaches down there. That what had happened while someone was at Arizona, and to a lesser extent, even Rich Rod, that Jedd Fisch had gone in and done really hard work to build relationships with the schools. I think it's the right way to, I think that's how you have to do things, unless you are at one of the 8 to 12 schools that are legitimate, no doubt about it, blue bloods. Unless you're at Michigan, unless you're at Alabama. And even then, I don't think you can completely write off your local school. So if only for the appearances of this is who we are, we recruit good, great football players in our state, I think you have to make those calls.
And maybe the comparison to like, if they came to Washington and a Seattle guy, would they, maybe that's not even the right comparison, because I think at Washington, and this has always been the case, but especially in the Big Ten, you got to feel like there's no reason why every one of our receiver signees every year shouldn't be a 4-star guy because of your proximity to California. And there's just a lot of available skill talent out here. And so if you're going to take someone who doesn't have the offers and is rated a little bit lower, it's because you really, really believe in him. And I did that with Desmond Roebuck, right? There you go. They clearly really believed in him. At Arizona, I mean, Arizona is a recruiting program that's so thriving that you don't even want to like go hard after the kid in Tucson who's the all-time leader in receptions in the state, who's like this just awesome athlete too, right? Does everything. Great defensive player, great hands, great route runner. He's a ball player. And that's the word you'd use to describe him. He's a ball player. So, you look at Arizona's 25 class and it's like, man, they really didn't think he was worth like a trying. Like I don't want to go too hard on it because you don't know the details, but I feel like years could pass and you could look at Desmond Roebuck's recruiting profile and you say, okay, Arizona State offered him, and then like a couple FCS programs offered him. Where was Arizona on this kid? And it might have been wasted effort anyway. And hey, he was all set for Jedd Fisch. And even if he had that little Arizona offer on there, what difference would it have made? But I say all this to say, as we sit here now on Wednesday, August 6th, and Washington has practiced 6 times this camp, I'm not terribly surprised that underrated, under-recruited Desmond Roebuck has been one of the most impressive players in camp so far. Now, he's getting opportunities with Denzel Boston on the sideline, and I think if Raiden Vinesbright is healthy, he probably is first in line among freshman receivers to play. You got to see him a little bit in the spring game. But Desmond Roebuck catches everything. Seems like he's always open. He's a pretty natural, fluid mover. I think his best 100-meter time in high school was like 11.5. That was not as a senior. So I think it's probably fair to assume he's a little faster than that now. But even if he weren't, if he had the same exact high school career in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, I don't think anybody's going to be saying like, oh my God, how did Alabama not recruit this guy? Alabama can get 5-star, 4-star, top 100 elite athletes. Guys are going to be high NFL draft picks basically at will at that position. So I get it. And I think that the size speed combination probably precludes him from being on the board of a lot of programs at receiver. I think there are probably a lot of programs that just have, he's how tall? Okay, well, if that's his height, he needs to be this fast. Okay, he's not that fast. All right, then we're not going to recruit him. But watch the tape. Turn on the tape. He's a ball player. And you're seeing that at practice. He's had a couple like crushing blocks. You could tell he's a big effort guy. You could tell he works really hard. Jedd Fisch called him out before practice even started as a guy that he was already hearing about in workouts. I don't know what the depth chart looks like for him this year. It seems like we talked last week, they only want to play 4 receivers. Denzel Boston regularly anyway. Denzel Boston and Rashid Williams are going to be involved. Amari Evans and Kevin Green are going to be involved. Seems like Raiden Vinesbright's probably involved. Audric Harris is in the mix, and so you're getting a little bit crowded there. But whether it's this year or down the road, I mean, he just seems like the kind of guy, every program has him every now and then, where is he the biggest guy? No. Is he the fastest guy? No. But just watch him play. Like, he's a football player. He is a receiver. He knows how to play the position.
Are you familiar with the book Range?
I'm not.
So it is a book written by David Epstein, he's a journalist, nonfiction writer. And the book Range is about athletic development. And the premise of the book, which some people have said is unconvincing, I found it very compelling, was that there is an increasing belief in America, especially, that specialization early on is how you get to be an elite athlete. And you're seeing kids specialize in sports earlier and younger. And that actually the research will show you that for the most part, that is a recipe to peak early. And that if you spend all your time focused on a sport, say you play soccer from the age of 10 on, you may reach your peak at a younger age. And whereas, and Federer is probably the best example of someone who played a lot of different sports and kind of messed around in his teenage years, wasn't the tennis specialist that so many in that sport were, especially 20 and 30 years ago. That having that well-rounded background actually provides a basis, even if your skill level at the age of 18, you're not as good of a player, that you have more room to grow once you focus and specialize. It's something I heard a lot from NFL scouts. In football, the exception tends to be quarterback, that quarterbacks are quarterbacks from a fairly young age, and they stay quarterbacks until they're moved to another position. When you talked about Roebuck's background as a decathlete, especially in playing other sports, that was the first thing that I thought of. I will always prefer a football recruit who has a well-rounded athletic background when it comes to projecting their future. I think they're better off. I think it's true in skills. I also think it's good in terms of mentality. Isaiah Stanback was he was the top quarterback recruit in the state his senior year. But he also started on a really good Garfield basketball team, and he was not a scorer. He was a rebounder and a defender. I think the different roles, like playing other sports where you're not necessarily the folk, I think there's so many things to be gained from it. And the other person I thought about as you were talking about him, and it's not quite the same, but Nate Burleson. Nate Burleson was a Washington recruit under Jim Lambright. Lambright is fired. Neuheisel comes in. And Neuheisel, it's fairly well known, pulled a scholarship offer. Kind of decided he's here because he's a legacy recruit. We're not doing that anymore. And Neuheisel has since said that was clearly a mistake. But one of the things Neuheisel looked at was the other scholarship offers he had. And that was actually a huge part of Neuheisel's. But Nate Nate was someone who played multiple sports. Nate was someone who was a track athlete. And Nate was someone who ended up being a 3rd-round pick out of Nevada, Reno. So I think, especially as recruiting has developed, and this isn't me just crapping on the recruiting rankings or it doesn't matter. It matters. Those are an attempt at an objective evaluation of people's talents. The most important thing remains how good that player becomes, how much they can improve over the course of their time in football. And I think someone who is a one sport and focuses exclusively on that and maybe even one position has less room to grow as they're in college. So this opening has prompted me to get fully on board the Roebuck hype train, the bandwagon. I'm firing up the bandwagon. Anybody that wants to jump along, I'll be driving.
Is this where we need to say it's been 6 practices, for crying out loud? We don't even know if the guy's going to be.
No. This is the time of year for unrestrained enthusiasm, Christian. We don't need any sort of we'll see what it's like, as Gary Payton would say, when the popcorn's hot. No, we just get to blather on about the beautiful trajectory that is the season ahead.
This is a guy Chris Peterson's staff would have evaluated and said, we have to have this guy.
Would they have
to have him? Look at how he plays football. I think. Well, yeah. I mean, and you'd say he was their kind of guy, Danny. He's Jedd Fisch's kind of guy too, for crying out loud. It's an example, I think, of the fact that, like, I think Jedd Fisch cares more about where Washington winds up in the recruiting rankings than your average head coach does.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, their offer decisions are not dictated by that. I think this is an example of there were other guys in this class they went after hard. There were, look at Washington's receiver class. They took 5 guys, and at one point or another, 3 of them were 4-star recruits. They felt like they had to have Dezmen Roebuck because they looked at his tape and thought he was a really good football player who could help them, So I think he's an example of trusting your eyes and trusting your evaluation and ignoring some of the rankings and not getting so caught up in, we've got 3 blue chippers in this class and also this guy. This wasn't a plan B thing for them. I think they just legit, like, in their mind, this guy probably should have been rated a lot higher. So I predict, and I've kind of felt this way. I felt this way a little bit going into camp, just watching his highlights. Like, God, this guy just looks like he knows how to play receiver. I predict you're going to hear plenty from Dezmen Roebuck as a receiver at Washington over the next few years. Will it be this year? I don't know. He's off to a great start, but particularly 26 and 27, I would think he could be a big part of this offense.
How many true freshmen do you think will play this year? And maybe I should even say, like, how many true freshmen will not redshirt?
I've been thinking about this. I think it's safe to say John Mills will not.
Mm-hmm.
Gotten some reps with the ones. Physically, I think he's ready. It's not like we talked last week, right? It's not a situation of throwing a Nickell Harris in there as a true freshman. I think he looks the part. Champ Talealea is going to be on the depth chart for sure.
Mm-hmm.
How much he plays, like, they haven't really given him any number 1 turns yet during camp, so we'll see. So, like, I don't know, is he a guy who you definitely want to get in there more than 4 games? If you commit to that, do you want to make sure you get him in every game? Do you want to make sure he plays on special teams? I'd probably lean away from redshirting for him too. I have a hard time seeing Raiden Vinesbright redshirt. I think he's playing. It seems like Desmond Roebuck is on the path toward not redshirting. But again, receivers crowded. We'll see. Could Austin Simmons as the number 4 tight end, do you want to play 4 tight ends enough where you'd burn his red shirt? He's kind of on the cusp probably. Rylon Dillard-Allen at safety sure seems like he's a lock to play this year. He's been getting turns with the ones during camp, but that's with Nickell Epstein banged up a little bit right now. So when Epstein is healthy, I think right this second, your starting duo is probably Nickell Epstein and Alex McLaughlin. He's really made a move, the transfer from Northern Arizona. We learned yesterday that Alex McLaughlin is up from 185 pounds to 200 this camp, Danny. He texts Taylor Mays his weight every day. Yesterday was 201, in case you're wondering.
I love the fact that Taylor Mays is coaching safeties.
Yeah, you can. So he joked. He said McLaughlin came up and bumped him and said, "Hey, I'm 201 today," and Mays was like, "I'm 235."
Yeah, I think I would wonder how long Taylor's been like above 220, because it might be since he was 18 or 19. Like that, he was a grown man when he was a high school senior.
Yeah, Bruce Feldman put out his freaks list
Mm-hmm.
for the Athletic this week. I think Taylor Mays probably would have been on that a few times.
Oh God, yeah. Do you think Washington will play more true freshmen than most Big Ten schools?
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I don't know, I just think they added some pieces at positions of need. And I think there's also can't wrap up the true freshman segment without mentioning Dylan Robinson. I think he's pretty clearly a number 2 cornerback right now. I'd imagine they'll find ways to get him on the field. 6'3" and 200 pounds and runs 10.7. You get that guy in the field, right? And so what's that, 7?
Yeah.
And we don't know yet what Zadrius Rainey Saleh's availability is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
He looks good. Him and Jacob, you wouldn't know Jacob Manu's coming off an ACL injury by the way he's going through drills. You can tell he wants out there badly. Rainey Saleh looks like he's moving well too. One of our longtime subscribers, Christopher Ulrich, pointed out in a YouTube comment that just watching the drills and stuff that Rainey Saleh looks like he's going to be a game wrecker. And like you could just, if you watch the linebackers go through drills and you don't know anything about Washington really, he's the guy you'd point to and go, who is that? Like that dude's huge. And you know from his high school film how fast and physical he is. So I'm sure they can't wait to get him out there either this year with the kind of the veteran presence they have with Buda Alukta linebacker, and Devin Bryant has really made a move. And if you get Manu back, that's one more. I think that's still TBD on whether they play him or hold him back for next year. But that's another guy who could get involved. Devin Hyde's been getting some number 2 turns at edge rusher. That's with Isaiah Ward and Deshaun Lynch both banged up. So once they're back, does that push him down far enough to where you could redshirt him? I think we talked about it before. I think Jedd Fisch just doesn't really think about it with freshmen. I think it's, hey, who can help the team? And if you're the 3rd best corner and maybe you're only going to play 80 to 100 snaps or something like that, like you're not thinking about 4 years from now in place of what can this guy do to help the team win, today in this season. So I think guys who are borderline, like you saw with Pocky Finau last year, I think there was some effort to, okay, this guy, you could probably find ways to get him into 6 to 8 games, but just as easily keep it at 3 and let him redshirt. So I think they probably will end up like playing more freshmen than the average, like healthy Big Ten program. A school like Purdue, a school like Maryland, I'd expect Maryland to see a lot of true freshmen on the field at Maryland, probably starting a true freshman quarterback. They had a decent recruiting class. I'm interested in their approach to just putting those guys out there and getting them opportunities. Like you think back to the way Chris Peterson's staff handled some of this stuff, and they had true freshmen contribute. His first year, Budda Baker started at safety day 1. His last year, Trent McDuffie was a starting cornerback by the 3rd game, I want to say. And so the guys who really picked it up right away, and showed that they belonged and they got their opportunities. But also that same season, there was a lot of clamoring for a certain freshman playmaker at receiver who currently is doing an okay job for the Los Angeles Rams to get on the field, who seemed to catch a touchdown every time they threw it to him in a receiver core that was not terribly talented, and they held him back a bit. I don't know that Jedd Fisch approaches things the same way.
The Puka conversation is interesting. I was also going to point out they did also redshirt Byron Murphy. And we've gone back and forth, and I know how hard it would have been for him to get on the field. And I'll just say, if you're good enough to go to the NFL after 3 seasons of college football, you don't need a redshirt. There's a way they can find for you to do something.
They'd have lost nothing by letting him play, by finding ways to get him into the game.
And that's hindsight, right? Like that is hindsight of saying, if you know now that you're not going to get a redshirt junior season, you're not going to get his 3rd season of football. He's not going to stay there for a 4th year. But that being said, I mean, Earl Thomas also left Texas after his it was his 3rd year, his redshirt sophomore year. Like, yeah, probably could have found a way for him to do some stuff as a freshman. What happened with Puka? I don't think I'm just influenced by what people thought early on too. I think it was by what I saw when he was on the field. And then after his redshirt freshman season, you didn't see as much from him. And then he was essentially kind of recruited over at the position.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely wanted him. He left after the pandemic season. He played that pandemic season.
Yep.
And then left. He had there was some health issues going on with his family back home. And so I think transferring home to BYU made a lot of sense that way. It also came at a time when like questions about Washington's offensive future were sort of abounding.
John Donovan.
Pre-2021. But yeah, and then because they had Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan and Jalen Polk, it didn't take long. I mean, that 20 and shoot, what would Puka have done for them in 2021, right? He'd have just been another wasted weapon like the rest of them. but because of how good that trio was in 22 and 23, I don't think anybody was thinking about what's Puka Nakua doing at BYU. And I think Puka Nakua is way better with the Rams than he was at BYU. He was banged up at BYU. He missed parts of seasons. He put up okay numbers, and he was a playmaker when he was healthy. But he's a guy who's absolutely playing his best football in the pros, which is great for him. I just think of it in terms of like, I think if this staff had a Puka Nakua talent at receiver, I think you're kind of seeing it with Raiden Vinesbright a little bit. Not that they're similar players necessarily, but I don't think there'd be a lot of time wasted thinking about like, well, he doesn't really know the offense yet, or we gotta, there's veterans who understand their responsibilities on running plays better, or who are better blockers, or whatever it might be. I think it'd just be like, oh, like this guy's a killer with the ball in his hands. Every time we put it up for him, he makes a play. And look how tough and good after the catch he is. Like, we have to find a way to get this guy in the field. And it doesn't need to be for 60 snaps every week, but we're going to feature him. We're going to get him targets. Washington's staff under Peterson came to that conclusion like halfway through that season. The Arizona game down there where they played horribly in the first half and then blew them out in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Puka had a huge game, and then he had a big game at home against Oregon, which was a great football game. They lost 35-31, got burned a couple times on defense on some like well executed screenplays, and Nakua caught a touchdown and had a couple other big plays. Jacob Eason had talked about him all season as like, this dude's legit. I trust him already. You could think there was a feeling of like, man, get this guy on the field more. Come on.
Yeah.
And then they had a bye week, and then they were playing Utah at home, and he got hurt in practice for the season, and they lost him. So right when they were about to really, I think he was in the starting lineup by then, right when they were about to really step on the gas with Puka Nakua's workload and target share, he got hurt, and then pandemic, short 2020 season, and he was gone. So I think about that a little bit when I hear Taylor Mays talk about Rylon Dillard-Allen, who was like a 10.8-ish 100-meter guy in high school as a junior, supposedly ran a laser timed like sub 4.3 40, which is kind of crazy. But I asked Taylor Mays about, hey, like, what did you guys, he was an early enrollee, what did you guys see from him in January or in spring practices to want to give him these turns with the ones and the twos right now? And he said his athletic ability and his movement skills, he has a chance to be a special player. You can turn on the film, and regardless of schematically or what you're teaching a player, athletic ability shows or it doesn't show. And that's the big highlight quote, right? The athletic ability shows or it doesn't show. Naturally, his football movements are awesome. He just shows up. I think when this coaching staff has a player about whom that is true, that you just can't watch him on the field without noting that he is an exceptional athlete, they're going to do everything they can to give that guy opportunities to prove that he should play. It's not about forcing him on top of the depth chart without him having to show it on the practice field, without him having to compete against the older guys, without him having to show you that he gets it and he's not going to hurt the team by being out of position and he knows the plays well enough to keep up. He's got to prove all that. It's about giving him the chances to prove it in camp. And I think there's been the conventional thinking for a long time was that unless you've got a Reggie Williams body type in a freshman, unless you've got a true freshman who is just so far and above more talented than anybody else at his position, you don't throw them in with the ones until there's a certain knowledge base established, right? They have to earn their opportunity just to get the reps. Whereas, I think there's some of that now, but I think especially at a program like Washington where you're trying to flip a roster from what they had last year to what you're going to need to compete in the Big Ten, you want to identify who those elite athletes are and put them in position to show you that they should play right away.
That's absolutely true. But the other part of it is that it's a mindset of the coaches. Old school football mentality is that when you bring freshmen in, you beat them down a little bit, right? This is college football. You're not going to be the most talented athlete every time you step out on the field. You've got a lot to learn. You need to get bigger and stronger. These are grown men who've been here for 3 and 4 years. That's sort of the old school approach, where the assumption, I would say, definitely when I was at Washington, the assumption was freshmen would redshirt. It was really unusual in the 90s and especially the early 90s, for freshmen not to redshirt. And some of that is that you need to instill some of the work ethic and humility to be part of the program. A more sort of modern, or it's Pete Carroll-ish, is that you coach to a guy's strengths. You don't sit there and tell him, like, you're not big enough, you're not as strong as you need to be. If there's something he can do that's exceptional, you start with trying to find a way to use that on the field. You do it through, here's what you can do well, instead of sort of the pointing out the inadequacies. And I think there is a shift. One of the things I'm most interested about in Jedd Fisch is seeing what type of coach he is, because clearly some of the things in terms of media access and how he views the program are heavily influenced by Belichick and what he was with the Patriots. There's other things that he does, and I would put the playing of young players in this category, that are much more reflective of the Pete Carroll, not through fear or intimidation, but excitement, and what Taylor Mays is saying about Dillard-Allen, which is there are things he does that absolutely jump off you. That's not a, hey, this young kid's got a lot to learn before we can trust him on the back end. That is a, man, we are so excited to use him. And that matters both within player development, but also how the players see it. And I think from a practical standpoint, in an era where you can transfer easier than ever, I think a team is well served by finding roles. If you can find a role for a guy sooner rather than later, I think you're going to benefit. Even if there are occasions where you end up burning someone's red shirt where, hey, he probably could have stayed here for 5 years. We're actually costing ourselves here by doing it. I think that the opportunity cost there is the number of guys that you're going to get engaged early on. And then I actually think logistically, or just from the evidence, I think that's a better way for guys to develop. Give them something small they can do early on and grow from there.
He's getting in fights too.
I saw that. So in your You were very diplomatic in this. It sounded like that there was a dust up. I believe it was Kevin Green, right? That's the receiver.
Yeah, Green and Dillard-Allen.
Did Dillard-Allen light him up?
I think I didn't have a great angle on it. Like it was a red zone snap, like inside the 10, I think, and in the stadium. And Damon Williams kind of rolled out to his right and scrambled and sort of threw it. The play might have even been blown dead, but he sort of threw it, not necessarily up for grabs, but didn't have a great angle on it to make the catch toward Green. And it went incomplete through the back of the end zone. And I guess there was some extracurricular contact. And now all of a sudden there's this big scrum, like right in front of touchdown terrace in that east end zone.
Yeah. And,
staffers are running over there, pulling guys off. And it's this whole first day of full pads, man. That's what happens. And yeah, Taylor Mays walking out of there with Dillard-Allen next to him. And Taylor Mays is holding his helmet and, lecturing him a bit, I think, on like, hey, but then when we asked him about after practice, Taylor Mays, which will not surprise you to learn, is fine with most of that. He's like, well, we got to protect the team and, make sure
that's
nobody
basically
gets hurt.
When I read that quote that we got to take care of each other, I was like, okay, Taylor Mays is telling him that's exactly what he wants him to do in a game. But you can't do that when it's your teammate in practice. Like that, and I read that. I mean, look, Taylor Mays is a freaking hammer on the back end. I was excited to read that, and I love trying to decode how fights probably happen in practice because you never know for sure, and there's all sorts of things going on that as an observer you don't see. I really enjoyed that report in yesterday's on Montlake though, because I was like, ooh, there was a fracas, and it elevated my opinion of Dillard-Allen. You want your safeties to have a little bit of that.
He's got that for sure. And Taylor, if you read that story, Taylor Mays calls him the Gnat. He said because he's just kind of pesky all over the place. They got an interesting safety room. Like I think it's definitely better than last year's overall, which might be a little bit of a hot take because I know Cam Fabiculanen was like one of their top defensive players last year. But I think between the three veterans, Epstein, CJ Christian, and Alex McLaughlin, you've got a pretty good foundation. And then they're going to find ways for Rylon Dillard-Allen to help them with his athleticism and his aggression. And I think Alex McLaughlin is a different player than they've had. I mean, 6'2", 200, very aggressive. Like you talk about guys towing that line and really love hitting and all that. I mean, I think he's your kind of classic box safety. They want all these guys to be able to do both. But CJ Christian made some nice plays in the backfield at Tuesday's practice, playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. So I think they're going to come to be a pretty well-rounded group. Vince Holmes is another really good athlete who's taking turns with the twos. I think got about 5 guys who I think could help them and could contribute this year. So I think I would imagine that Ryan Walters wanting what he wants out of his DBs and having a history of coaching safeties, I would imagine he probably got here and was pretty pleased with the variety of talent back there.
I am really hoping that early in this season, something happens that displaces the memory of Vincent Holmes that I have. I do not want the first thing I think of when his name is mentioned to be Rutgers. I feel bad about myself. I would prefer that something else jump to mind.
It's what he deserves.
He did such a tough thing.
He started and played like 60 plus snaps against USC last year.
Yes, he did.
So he's got it. He's got a chance. He's made some plays.
Yes, he has.
I think what you like that he didn't transfer. Like, I think if a guy makes a mistake like that early in his career and then for whatever reason, like thinks he's better off in another program and then leaves, like that's a bummer. Cause then it's sealed, right? Like that's going to be your memory of him, but he's still got a shot to erase it.
Absolutely. He does. I'm cheering for him.
So yeah, I is the over under for freshmen playing this year like 7? Freshmen not redshirting, something like 7. The 2-0 linemen, Dillard-Allen, Vinesbright, Roebuck, Dylan Robinson. like maybe Rainey Sal. So yeah, maybe it's 6.5.
6.5. You gonna take the over or the under?
I was one off last year. I correctly predicted all the guys who didn't redshirt wouldn't redshirt, and I also thought Paki Finau wouldn't redshirt, but he did.
Okay.
So I was 1-2 aggressive on my guess last year.
You were one high.
So I'll recompensate and go take the under, but would not be surprised if the over hit either.
And then what do you think? I'll be curious. It'll be interesting to watch how the rest of it goes in the Big Ten, how other schools are. Because you certainly are going to have programs that look to sort of have collective growing pains where we're going to play a bunch of young guys together and let them learn together, believing that that's going to pay off 2 or 3 years down. But Washington's not at that position right now. Like that would have been more true last year than it is this year, where I think this year the decisions about redshirting will be entirely premised on sort of ability and development. Is this guy ready for that? Do we want him to play this early?
I think so. And I think we're going to get to a point where there's no more redshirting. Like, I think that's coming. Where
in college football?
Yeah, where there's just a 5-year eligibility clock, period. And you got 5 years to play however many seasons you can fit in those 5 years. And once the 5 years are up, you're done.
It's so funny because then it'll come, but I had my 5 years, but I got hurt in one of those years, so I need a 6th year. Everybody's gonna be like, oh, okay, that's fair. And then somebody's gonna be like, one of those 5 years was at a junior college, that shouldn't count anymore. And then they'll be like, oh, okay, you're right, that's not gonna count. I think we're more likely to have indefinite college eligibility than we are to have a firm 5-year clock.
I know I played in 15 games last year. But 5 of our games came against teams that were coming off of bye weeks. That's got to be worth something. Come on.
I played in all 15, but it was only on special teams, and that's not fair because this coach is a hoser.
There was a kid who got an extra year of eligibility after playing in a full season by arguing that because he was coming off of an ACL injury, I think it was, he wasn't the same player. And so that season should not count against his eligibility, and they gave it to him. And I just thought, I'm like, if that's what we're doing, then there just shouldn't be any eligibility limits. You should just let guys play till they don't want to or till the school won't have them anymore.
I was going to say I'm not going to be cynical about this, but I don't even think I need to offer that preface. Those decisions are based largely on how likely the NCAA feels it's going to be sued. That's my firm belief. And are we going to get just absolutely hosed in court? I think, especially post-COVID, that all of those things have gone out the window. And I've screamed and cried about how I think there should at least be an age limit or something. I don't know what you do about it. I don't know what's fair. I don't have any opinions on any of that anymore, given the current state of the game.
I'm glad you mentioned the court thing because the NCAA has been winning recently. These suits around, one of my years of eligibility was a D2, that shouldn't count, or D3, that shouldn't count, or you're suppressing my you're inflicting undue harm against me by suppressing my earning potential. Those cases are not winning. Like the NCAA is prevailing in those cases by and large. So there is judicial support for the idea of a limited eligibility clock. So I've kind of come around on, because I was predicting the same thing, like, oh, they're just going to keep losing in court. The JUCO thing paved the way for, like, we're just going to have unlimited eligibility. I think it's more likely we're going to get to what Chris Peterson was arguing for years, by the way, which was just a 5-year clock. Like, take the burden off the coaches to try to manage, like, well, this guy's good enough to be, our, like, end on field goal protect and field goal block, and he's like our 8th offensive lineman, but I don't want to waste a whole year having him do that, so let's redshirt him, but let's find 4 games for him to play in. Like, I think coaches would love to not have to think about that and just manage their roster the way that an NFL team would and play whoever is the right guy for that spot in that moment in that game, and don't worry about how many other games they've played. I think we're getting to that. It seems like there's momentum for that.
Clearly, I'm not a lawyer. I have no background in that at all. It has been exceptionally weird, however, for me to hold these two conflicting realities in my head. On the one hand, you have the NFL, which has set a limit that no player can enter its league until they are 3 years removed from their date of high school graduation, which has withstood a number of legal challenges. And there was that one little brief blip with Maurice Clarett where it looked like it was going to go away. But they've held that, which frankly seems slightly un-American to me. You're an adult, but you're not old enough to play in our league. Contrast that with the other two thing was where the NCAA was just routinely, you got Pavia saying, 2 years of junior college shouldn't count. The NCAA, like the college eligibility limit, seems fairly straightforward. Seems fair. And they would keep just getting smashed. And like, all right, everybody gets that extra year because of COVID. And Diego's, his JUCO doesn't count against him. And now Washington's going to lose a quarterback that they didn't know they were going to get to keep. I wondered if it was maybe just the price of legal staff, of representation, the retainer size between what the NFL was paying and what the NCAA is paying, but pointing out that the NCAA has started to rack up some wins maybe means sanity is returning to it.
On the Thaddius Dixon thing, I should point out that through 6 practices, Takario Davis looks pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
We saw him in the spring too, obviously, but he is having a very good camp.
I loved the way Thaddius Dixon played last year. If Thaddius Dixon was going to be unhappy playing nickel, I think that that's silly. And I hope he finds happiness in it at his new school. The objections that he had to that, I did not find to be very compelling. And they did not strike a chord. I did not feel he was getting done wrong.
I think it was a particular bummer for Husky fans just because he was such a dog, so to speak.
He was, and he loved the legacy of the DBs. I loved how he played, and I wish him the best. But when it came down to it, I was like, I don't know, man. Like you're going to play a ton, and I can get how you don't like the feel of that, but if you really want to leave over that, I wish you nothing but the best. But I don't think Jedd Fisch and his staff screwed that up at all.
Nickell is interesting with them right now. I'd have bet a lot of money that Rashawn Clark had that wrapped up after spring. In the last couple days, it's mostly been Leroy Bryant in there with the ones.
Leroy Bryant!
God damn it, Leroy. He's a good player. He was kind of the pseudo 4-star in Washington's 2023 class, who was actually a 3-star, but everybody was like, watch his tape and watch some tape of some of the like 4-star guys that they're supposedly missing out on and who's actually better. So the previous staff was really high on him, and he's also their like number 3 corner right now, 3-4-ish, depending on like whether you'd go with him or Rashawn Clark outside if one of those top 2 guys got hurt. But they're giving him a long look at nickel, and he's made some plays. And I wonder if that spot is a little more competitive than we might have thought it would be coming out of spring. Or this is another thing that I haven't really touched on like a ton in my practice reports. I think Ryan Walters just really wants to see everybody. Like, I think he wants to see everyone he has at his disposal, with the exception of some true freshmen who just clearly like aren't there yet physically. And not just in like, okay, the 3s are going to go against the 3s, but like I'm going to put some guys out there, try some different combinations in the secondary with the 1s and with the 2s and against the first team offense and against the second team offense, and just see what I have and see what sticks. Because I do think he has a similar mindset to Steve Belichick, where it's like, it's not even just who are the best 11, but it's who's the best 11 in this particular down and distance and part of the field, and who can give us something in this particular coverage against this particular style of offense. And I'm not going to know any of this if I don't put these guys in position to like get some real reps against Big Ten starter caliber players in practice. So in some ways I'm like hesitant to draw sweeping conclusions about some of the personnel groupings we see at practice relative to like, what's the depth chart going to look like? But I think like Belichick, you'll probably see them play a lot of guys.
Are you going to watch UNC's defense at all this year, or UNC's program?
Where I can't say I'm like terribly interested.
Yeah, same. I'm surprised by that. There's a couple players there that I really liked. I loved Kamari House. I don't have negative feelings about Steve Belichick. I thought what he did with the team was interesting last year, but I also didn't have this really strong feel. And maybe that's a commentary on how I feel about Ryan Walters, that I'm kind of like, well, of course Steve's going to go coach with his dad. And I'm really interested. I think they got a really good hire as their DC. I'm interested to see what happened. But or maybe I'm growing up. Is it possible that I'm getting more mature about these sort of things where I'm just like, I mean, I was wishing Thaddius Dixon well. Now I'm like feeling like, yeah, I don't have any bones to pick about the Belichick thing. I don't even think I'm eager for them to not be that good. I would be surprised if they're really good, but yeah. Is this what maturity feels like?
It could be. I just think the Belichick sour feelings and the players transferring was a very, very off-season thing.
Yeah.
That was a very this was not a fun season for Washington. It's finishing in the Sun Bowl. Everyone knows that your defensive coordinator is leaving. You don't know yet that no, you did know they were replacing him with Ryan Walters at that point.
Yep.
That'd been reported.
Yep.
So I think it was, look, we're at the very beginning of a very long off season, and the very first thing that happens to Washington is their defensive coordinator leaves, and 4 of Washington's players transfer to the school he's going to, and 2 of them were guys who absolutely would have been dudes on this team.
Yep.
Kamari House and Thaddius Dixon, and you haven't brought in. Maybe I'm getting the timeline wrong. You haven't necessarily brought in all of your portal pieces yet. So you don't know exactly what
you knew Davis was coming, right? You knew Davis was coming. But yeah, all the portal wasn't settled.
So it's that's what was happening. There were no more games. That was the news of the day. And so there's all this room and all this time for people to sit around and be pissed about it. And I think the Belichick of it all probably contributed to some of the feelings, right? Here you brought in this guy's son to be your defensive coordinator, and the fan base, I think, was pretty on board, and I think he did an okay job. But you made such a big deal about how the legendary dad was around your program all the time, and now he's starting his own program and talking about them as the 33rd NFL team when that's language that you've used, and we know how much time he spent watching your program to see how the NFL approach would work at college. It might have been part of what convinced him that it could, and now he's going to go do the same thing, but with your defensive coordinator, who's his kid. And, oh, by the way, they're going to take 4 players from you. And, oh, by the way, it's 2 guys who the fan base really, really liked. And so I think that all but when you take a step back, it's well, yeah, kid's going to go work for his dad. That makes sense. And, well, you recruited over the top of Thaddius Dixon at outside corner. You went out and got your guy from Arizona. And so that kind of makes sense. And I don't think North Carolina poached Kamari House. I think Kamari House probably thought he could command a little bit more money based on the freshman year that he had, and was going to try to go get that somewhere else anyway. I think he was probably headed to the portal, whether there was a Belichick at North Carolina or not. That was my read on it. That was my read on it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I think you'd really like to have held on to a talent like Peyton Waters. I think he showed you a lot last year. But, I mean, is anybody talking about, oh, my God, Washington doesn't have Peyton Waters anymore?
No.
You went out and got 2 veteran safeties. You recruited over the top of him with veteran guys. He was going to be a sophomore. You obviously love Rylon Dillard-Allen. You kind of replaced Peyton Waters with Rylon Dillard-Allen, except maybe you think he has even more athletic upside. And then the 4th guy was Jason Robinson, who redshirted for you as a receiver at a position where I think you feel pretty good about your young talent. So I think months have passed and nobody around Washington is really thinking about the Belichick thing anymore. That's just kind of my read on it.
I would also say that looking back, I think the 1 year of Belichick, both Steve and Bill being around the program, was a net positive for Washington. I think having Bill come and do those events, which he did, and he was way more involved and around than Pete Carroll ever was. Like his presence was
way more.
Yeah, like he actually, I think, was an asset. And look, it's a late coaching change. Were you going to get a better defensive coordinator than Steve Belichick? Like, I don't really think so. I think he did a fairly good job. Yeah, it stinks that House and Dixon ended up leaving. Like, those are the two guys primarily, and because they were the ones I saw the most. But I think it's a fair exchange. I take it. I do it again. Dang it!
I wrote as much before the transfers, like after the it was clear that Steve was going to leave for North Carolina, but before the transfers, and I kind of thought, I'm like, did I jump the gun? Like, would I change that take now? And I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like, I did not see that as North Carolina poached a bunch of Washington guys. I think that there were extenuating circumstances. I just don't like. I think Jedd Fisch is being totally genuine when he says there are no hard feelings whatsoever. Like, still got all the respect in the world for those guys. I wish him the best. I think he'd rather have Kamori House on his roster than not. But I don't think he's swallowing it to say that.
I would tend to agree with you. Also, no one is going to go against Belichick.
Well, no.
Right?
That would be
nobody's going to say like, yeah, I got a bone to pick with the Sith Overlord. I'd like to see if I can hold a grudge as long as that guy does. Because if it comes to pettiness, like that guy is always going to win.
You know who might, though?
Ian?
IP McFarland.
He sent us a video this week.
Hell yeah.
Do you think everybody's ready for that?
They're not, but they're going to get ready.
I'm going to be like the rapper's hype man. Are you ready to see IP McFarland? No, man, I don't think they're ready. Are you ready? Get your hands up. Get your hands up.
First off,
IP.
Recording on video, which I'm pretty sure you don't want me to do yet because there's no way you're going to be able to edit this in. It's harder because while my face is hardly camera ready, it can be contorted in some really stupid ways, and my sound quality probably isn't that great because I'm recording in my office so I could have the 1991 National Championship front page behind me, and if we turn, we'll pass a mighty University of Puget Sound football helmet. You can also see in the background the Seattle Times sports page on draft day doing a side-by-side of Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning. The reason that is framed in my office is because my father, a longtime friend of Mike Price's, bet me my college tuition that Leaf would have a better career than Manning, which the jury is still out on. My question this week is probably more for CC. We saw Bruce Feldman's Freaks List this week. 101 names. Who on the Washington football team was left off, unfortunately? Everyone was. But who deserved to be on that team? Or more simply stated, who are the freak athletes on this football team? Maybe not the best players, but the ones that have an athletic peak that no one else can match. Or, if you want a different question, you can do what you did last week, completely ignore the premise of the question I asked you, and answer some other question that I don't quite know what it was. Shout out to Jim, whose last name will remain anonymous, who I just had a phone call with this morning to go over his new business idea, which is a fun, creative endeavor that I wish him all the luck in the world on. I wish you guys a good week. Go Dogs.
So I went back and listened to last week's episode, and I don't know what Ian's getting at because I feel like he asked what we were looking forward to this year, and that's what we talked about, was it not?
I think we were more general enthusiasm. I think he might have been looking forward to a specific thing. I think he was I don't want the hype. I don't know.
Well,
far be it from me to question IP McFarland. Also, do you think Jim called him because of Say Who, Say Pod?
I think we can only assume. So, sorry.
That would be
for the business.
Yeah, that would be the first. I think that would be the first thing we've done for Ian.
It would. We will answer his question directly this time. I'll note if you did not read Bruce Feldman's Freaks List, Parker Brailsford checked in at number 20.
Yeah.
Over at Alabama, and at first I was like, really? But then, well, guy that size, like excelling as a starting center at Alabama, probably has to be a freak, strength wise at least. So at Washington, I suppose you might throw Damon Williams in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think down the road, you could be talking about Dylan Robinson as that kind of guy. You mentioned earlier, he's all of 6'3", 200, and I assume he'll be bigger in a couple of years with track times around like 10.7 in the 100-meter, which is crazy speed for that size. Zadrius Rainey Sal, perhaps. I think Jedd Fisch said Dylan Robinson already has like the top broad jump on the team too.
Ooh, I love a broad jump measurement.
Rylon Dillard-Allen has that kind of speed. Maybe some of the young offensive linemen. The one guy on that defensive front we talked about last week who gets associated with the word freak already is Ontario Thompson.
Oh, what about Durf? What about Durf?
So Zach Durfee probably is. I think he is the most complete package on the team in terms of athletic ability / ideal size for the position he plays.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's other guys who fit that description too. I mean, Denzel Boston being 6'4" and being the kind of athlete he is impressive. You know, there's no doubt they have good size and speed elsewhere. I think Durfee, he says he's leaned up. He's like low 250s right now.
Jeez.
He looks like a dude. I mean, he just watched him out there lining up at edge rusher with that defense going against the number one offense. He stands out physically. And I think he's had a good camp too. I mean, you could see him getting in the backfield and I've written about guys just rave about him in the weight room, talk about like how even going back to like his first year when the NCAA wouldn't let him play and what he was doing on scout team, and he's smashing personal records in the weight room, and guys were just like, whoa, who is this guy? So I think he'd be a candidate. Durfee was asked this question at Media Day, or a similar question, and he submitted Adam Mohammed. I think the way he put it was, he's like, I don't even think Adam Mohammed knows how much he can lift. They just put weights on the bar and he does it. And he's never not been able to do whatever they put on the bar.
Oh, that's
for him.
Interesting.
He's like, I don't even know if Adam Mohammed has a bench max, because they just throw weight on there, and he's like that. It's insane. You wouldn't believe how strong he is. So that's Zach Durfee's take on Adam Mohammed. And like, Adam Mohammed has he's going to have a role this year. I think he's a year away from obviously being like a featured back. So maybe going into next year, if he has like a solid year as their RB2, maybe going into his junior year, that's when you start to see Jedd Fisch do some stumping behind the scenes for Adam Mohammed being included on the freaks list. You know, I don't think he's going to like set any speed records necessarily, but in terms of like physique and strength, I don't know that there will be a ton of running backs who look like him.
Have you ever seen the dude on the internet? He's Eastern European. He's a professional weightlifter. I can't remember what his category is, but he's a leaner dude, and he dresses up like a janitor and goes to these gyms and will like go up to the different like big muscled dudes who are like huge deadlift numbers, and he'll like say stuff like, "Why are you guys using fake weights?" And then
I have seen that. Yeah.
It's such a great bit. he's got a 32 kg mop that, like, when he hands it to him, they're like, "Whoa, this thing's so heavy." I could see Adam Mohammed having a maybe he could have a social media career such as that.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I get the sense Scotty Graham described him as like an old soul humor wise.
Oh, really?
Like he's into like airplane style humor, like Leslie
Really?
Nielsen airplane style humor. Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
I'm intrigued.
I don't know if he meant specifically that movie or just like that kind of brand of humor, but very popular guy. Everybody loves him. So shoot, you know what? I'm not going to watch the Huskies practice again until next Tuesday because they're off today as we record this. And tomorrow I am flying to Anchorage, Alaska for a good pal's bachelor party for 3 nights. I'll return Sunday, and then the Huskies are off Monday. So I won't be. It was occurring to me as I was driving home on Tuesday afternoon, like I'm not coming back up here for a week. I will have a cavalcade, a series of freelancers out there for me. There will be practice reports at onmontlake.com. Probably no video though, like I said in my last post, unless it's of glaciers and halibut fishing, which I've never done before, by the way.
Oh, you've never caught halibut? Halibut's weird. They don't fight much. The first time I caught a halibut, I thought I was reeling up a very heavy paper bag. And then they're a weird looking fish because their eye rotates around. So they're a bottom fish and they've got this big flap. And then you bring them in the boat and they'll flop like 45, 60 minutes after you catch them. They'll still kind of like have these twitch reactions. I went to Alaska when I was, I think in second grade for the first time when we caught halibut, and I was freaked out by them. A delicious fish.
It's good to have that awareness. Thanks to everybody for checking out the YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, please go to youtube.com/@onmontlake. You can Google it. You can click it in the show description if you're getting the email of the podcast. Click subscribe. Helps expand our reach. We're coming up on 1,200 subscribers in just a couple weeks of existence here, which is awesome. Great reception for our first episode on YouTube. Again, if you don't have a preferred podcast platform, it would help us out a lot if you'd go ahead and watch and listen on YouTube. You can even just turn it on and do other stuff on your computer and use the audio from the tab. You don't have to actually watch us if you don't want to, if it makes you uncomfortable.
Wait. I'm wearing a jacket. I'm not wearing a jacket so you can do something in the background.
Danny put on a sport coat again. So we watch him at least. Rate the podcast, leave us a review, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. It helps people find it. Subscribe to onmontlake.com for continued coverage of Washington training camp, even though it won't be coming from me for the next 4 days.
That is not how you subscribe it. You will have a lineup of wall-to-wall coverage arranged because that's how you do it at OnMont. Like there are no days off, not even when you're taking days off.
That's true. Today's kind of a day off, although we're doing the podcast. So I should add too, like if you're watching this on YouTube, you may well be watching it on Wednesday. So for those of you still listening on Apple, Spotify, wherever, obviously that's great. Just know that if you want to listen to the podcast 12 hours or so before it comes out very early Thursday morning, the YouTube copy will be going up every Wednesday night when we record, or on the odd week where we got to move recording every Thursday night if it's going to publish Friday morning. So little incentive for you to check us out on YouTube. You can get the podcast a day earlier.
Sweet.
I think we'll talk to you next week.